Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. The mid-afternoon sun glimmered off the cobblestones of Riverton's historic market square, turning the town's quaint brick buildings into golden sentinels of a simpler era. But simplicity was a word that had long escaped Lorrana Merrick's life. Today, she stood behind a rickety wooden stall, her hands deep in suds, scrubbing plates and teapots that had seen better days. Yet the plates were only a backdrop. The real work and worry lay in Garrick Court. Garrick Court, the town's legal fortress and center of more scandals than a tabloid could ever dream of, was where her husband, Merrick Garrick, now faced an uphill battle. Accused of embezzlement by a powerful rival, Merrick's fortunes and his freedom rested precariously on the outcome. Lorrana, however, refused to sit idle. She had always been a force of nature. Where others saw insurmountable problems, she saw a challenge waiting for a spark. And that spark, she decided, would come from the very heart of the community, the annual Riverton Summer Fair. The fair had once been a charming spectacle of local arts, foods, and laughter, but this year, Lorrana turned it into a fundraising machine, a beacon for hope. "Hot water and high spirits," read the makeshift banner over her stall, a nod to the steam rising from the massive pots of her specialty lavender and mint-infused herbal teas. She had called it the Lorrana Cleanup Challenge, inviting townspeople to wash dishes, sweep floors, or even help cook, with all tips going straight to Garrick's legal fund. The first wave of volunteers, hesitant and curious, approached. Mrs. Penrose, the elderly baker with a penchant for gossip, squinted at the bubbling teapots. "What's this all about, Lorrana? Raising funds for him?" she asked, her voice a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "Yes, him," she said, smiling, wiping her hands on a faded apron. "And no, it's not charity, it's community action. Garrick's been wronged, and we're going to prove it, one plate, one cup of tea at a time." By midday, a small line had formed. Children clung to their parents' legs, fascinated by the sight of a grown woman wielding a sponge like a sword. The soap suds glistened in the sunlight, reflecting more than just water. They reflected determination. Each tip, each coin, each bill placed in the jar represented belief in Garrick's innocence. Yet not everyone was convinced. Among the crowd, Mr. Harkwell, the shrewd businessman who had been pushing the case against Merrick, lurked. His sharp eyes scanned every transaction, every interaction, and every smile. He had built his fortune on intimidation, and this public display of support for Merrick was a thorn in his perfectly manicured side. "Lorrana," he called, his voice slicing through the fair's lively chatter, "you're making a spectacle. Is this how you intend to fight a legal battle, by washing dishes in public?" Lorrana's back stiffened, but she met his gaze evenly. "Perhaps, Mr. Harkwell, you underestimate the power of a community that believes in justice. Or maybe," she added, dipping a brush into soapy water with theatrical flair, "you simply underestimate me." The crowd murmured, a mix of amusement and admiration, and Mr. Harkwell's scowl deepened. But Lorrana didn't flinch. She had bigger worries than the disapproval of a man who thrived on fear. Each hour brought more donors, more helpers, and more proof that Garrick's cause was alive and thriving. By late afternoon, Lorrana had exhausted her repertoire of tea blends. From chamomile to ginger lavender to peppermint vanilla, she had brewed enough concoctions to fill a small lake. But it wasn't the teas alone that drew people, it was her story. She spoke of the unfair accusations, the late nights poring over documents with Garrick, the moments of doubt and despair. She spoke with honesty, emotion, and just enough humor to draw laughter from even the most cynical listener. "I've scrubbed more dishes than I can count, but if it helps my husband get justice, I'll scrub 1,000 more, and maybe even sing while I do it." By evening, the fairground had transformed. The crowd had grown, with townspeople coming not just for tea or clean plates, but for a chance to stand with Lorrana and Garrick. She had turned her modest stall into a movement, and for the first time since the accusations, Merrick felt a glimmer of hope. The phone call came just as the last plate of the day was washed, and the sun dipped low. Lorrana answered, her fingers still damp and wrinkled from the hours of scrubbing. It was Merrick, his voice shaky but determined. "Lorrana, you did this?" he asked. She laughed softly, her exhaustion tugging at her smile. "We did this. Riverton believes in you. They believe in justice. And if the court will see reason, it will see us too." Merrick's sigh of relief was audible through the receiver. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "By coming home safe, and promising me that next time you'll let me handle the tough battles while you handle the legal ones." The following week, Garrick Court buzzed with renewed energy. Lorrana's fundraising efforts had not only bolstered Merrick's legal defense, but had also drawn media attention. Local newspapers ran stories of her dedication, capturing images of a soap-streaked but unyielding woman who had turned community support into action. During one particularly tense session, Lorrana sat in the gallery, her fingers intertwined, her heart hammering as the judge read the preliminary findings. Garrick's attorney, bolstered by funds raised through the fair, presented new evidence and testimony. The courtroom, once a place of fear and intimidation, became a stage for truth and perseverance. By the end of the month, the tides had shifted. Merrick's accuser, faced with mounting evidence and public scrutiny, began to falter. Witnesses who had been hesitant to speak came forward, emboldened by Lorrana's unwavering efforts. Even Mr. Harkwell, who had once sneered at her in the fairground, began to realize that undermining her was no longer an option. Finally, the judge delivered a verdict. Merrick was cleared of all charges, vindicated in front of the entire community and the media. The courtroom erupted in quiet applause, and Lorrana felt a weight lift from her shoulders. But she didn't gloat. She simply reached out, taking Merrick's hand, and smiled. Outside, the town square was already celebrating. The same fairground that had witnessed hours of scrubbing, laughter, and determination now erupted with cheers and music. Lorrana, standing amid the crowd, felt the warmth of thousands small acts of faith coalesce into something larger than herself, a triumph not just for Garrick, but for every person who refused to let injustice pass noticed. Later that evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Lorrana cleaned up her stall for the last time, her hands sore but her spirit invigorated. Garrick approached, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, an unpretentious but heartfelt token of gratitude. "You were incredible," he said, pressing the flowers into her hands. "I owe you everything." Lorrana shook her head, brushing back a strand of hair damp from the day's efforts. "We owe each other, and the town owes itself a reminder. When you fight for justice, it's not just the law that matters, it's the people who stand beside you." As they walked home together, side by side, Lorrana reflected on the whirlwind weeks that had transformed her life. From scrubbing dishes in the blazing sun to standing tall in the courtroom gallery, she had discovered a truth that would stay with her forever. Courage wasn't about grand gestures, it was about showing up, even when the odds were stacked, and trusting that together people could move mountains. Riverton would remember her efforts for years to come, and as for Lorrana, she knew that if ever another storm brewed, she would meet it head-on, armed not with anger or fear, but with determination, suds, and a heart full of relentless hope. In the end, the story of Lorrana in hot water wasn't just about fundraising or legal battles. It was about resilience, community, and the extraordinary power of one woman who refused to let injustice win.